The fluorescent lights of the congressional hearing room seemed particularly harsh that afternoon. Mark Zuckerberg sat upright in his chair, his posture perfect as always, yet something had changed in his eyes. Those who knew him best could see it. Behind the carefully composed expression and rehearsed responses lay something new: exhaustion. Not the kind that comes from a few late nights, but the bone-deep weariness that accumulates when one carries the weight of billions of digital connections on their shoulders. For 7 hours, he had fielded questions about data privacy, content moderation, and algorithm transparency. 7 hours of saying the right things while feeling increasingly hollow inside. He answered each question with the same measured tone, but each response seemed to drain him further, like water slowly leaking from a once full vessel. That evening, in his hotel suite overlooking the Washington skyline, Mark stood by the window. The city lights below mirrored the distant stars above, both equally removed from his reach. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. 22 days of hearings in the past 4 months. 22 days of defending the empire he had built, the platforms that connected over 3 billion people worldwide. 22 days of trying to explain how something created with such optimistic intentions had become so complicated, so criticized, so scrutinized. His phone buzzed again. Another crisis. Another decision needed. Another headline questioning his company's impact on society. He didn't pick it up. Not this time. Instead, he watched his reflection in the window and barely recognized the man staring back at him. When had the lines around his eyes deepened? When had the weight of responsibility become so visible on his frame? He was only 37 years old, yet he felt ancient. 3 weeks later, back at company headquarters, Mark stood before a select group of engineers, investors, and media representatives. The moment they had all been waiting for had arrived. The unveiling of what his team called the next frontier in human connectivity, an advanced neural interface that promised to revolutionize virtual reality by directly engaging with a brain's neural pathways. More immersive than any VR headset, more intuitive than any interface ever created. The prototype sat on a pedestal at the center of the stage, sleek and unassuming, belying its technological complexity. What you're about to witness, Mark began, his voice carrying across the hushed room, is not just an evolution in technology. It's a revolution in human connection. The words felt rehearsed, hollow. How many times had he promised revolution? How many times had he spoken of bringing people closer together? And yet, despite all the platforms and tools his company had created, despite connecting billions across the globe, why did humanity seem more divided than ever? Why did he himself feel more isolated? He pushed these thoughts aside and continued with the demonstration. The prototype was secured to his temples, its neural sensors making contact with his skin. A technician stood nearby, monitoring the systems. This was a controlled demonstration, limited in scope, intended only to show the basic functionality, how the interface could translate neural impulses into actions within a virtual environment without physical movement. The system is calibrating, the technician announced, eyes fixed on the monitoring screens. The audience watched in anticipation as data readouts projected on the wall behind them showed Mark's brainwaves being processed in real time. Everything was proceeding according to protocol, until it wasn't. Later, investigators would determine that a power surge, unprecedented and unexplainable, had coursed through the building's electrical system at exactly 3:47 p.m. The surge lasted less than a second, barely noticeable to most in the room. But for the sensitive neural interface connected directly to Mark Zuckerberg's brain, that fraction of a second was enough. Mark felt it immediately, a sharp, electric sensation that wasn't painful but overwhelming, like every neuron firing simultaneously. The room before him blurred, faces of colleagues and guests stretching into streams of light. Then darkness, complete and absolute. His last conscious thought was not of fear, but of a strange relief. The constant pressure, the endless demands, the perpetual connectivity, all gone in an instant. When awareness returned, he was no longer in the demonstration room. He wasn't anywhere recognizable at all. Mark found himself suspended in what appeared to be infinite space, but not the cold vacuum of astronomy. This space was alive. Beneath him, around him, stretching in all directions was what looked like an ocean, not of water, but of consciousness itself. Billions of shimmering points of light, like stars but more dynamic, pulsed and moved in complex patterns. As he watched, mesmerized, he began to understand what he was seeing. Each light represented a human thought, a feeling, a connection. Some clustered together in intricate constellations, while others drifted in isolation. Some burned intensely with passion or anger. Others glowed softly with contemplation or joy. It was beautiful and overwhelming. Mark instinctively knew he was witnessing the collective consciousness of humanity, or at least some representation of it that his mind could comprehend. Within this vast ocean, he could sense the digital networks he had helped create, visible as patterns connecting certain constellations, bringing some lights closer while sometimes pushing others further apart. Remarkable, isn't it? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, simultaneously young and ancient, masculine and feminine, familiar yet completely unknown. Mark turned, or at least experienced the sensation of turning within this place, and found himself in the presence of someone, a being of pure light that seemed to shift form continuously. One moment it appeared as a winged figure from Western religious iconography, the next as a multi-armed deity from Eastern traditions, then briefly as a wise elder from indigenous spiritual representations, never settling on a single form but encompassing all. "What is this place?" Mark asked, surprised to find he could speak without actually speaking. Thoughts translated directly into communication here. "Am I dead? Is this heaven?" The luminous being's response felt like gentle laughter. "No, not dead. And this isn't heaven, at least not in the way you might imagine it. This is, let's call it an interface, a place where your consciousness can perceive truths that your physical senses cannot." The being's presence radiated a calm wisdom that Mark had rarely encountered in his fast-paced world of innovation and disruption. As if sensing his confusion, the luminous entity gestured toward the vast ocean of consciousness surrounding them. "What you built has changed the tapestry of human connection. Cool, see for yourself." With a gentle motion, the being guided Mark closer to the shimmering constellations below them. As they approached, individual points of light resolved into clearer focus. Mark could now see distinct patterns, digital pathways connecting certain clusters of consciousness while leaving others isolated. His platforms were visible here, not as code or servers, but as actual bridges between human minds. Some bridges were strong and vibrant, pulsing with genuine connection. Others were thin and fragile, artificial links where true understanding failed to flow. Still others appeared dark and twisted, channels where anger and division festered and grew. "I don't understand," Mark said, though part of him was beginning to comprehend all too well. "My goal was to bring people together, to make the world more open and connected." The being's form shifted again, momentarily appearing as something resembling an ancient scribe with knowing eyes. "And in many ways, you succeeded. Look here." The entity directed Mark's attention to a particularly bright cluster where thousands of lights pulsed in harmony. Communities formed, support given to those who needed it, knowledge shared freely across boundaries that once seemed impenetrable, voices amplified that might never have been heard. Mark felt a surge of pride, seeing the positive impacts visualized so beautifully. But the moment was short-lived as the being guided him toward darker regions of the consciousness ocean. Yet here, and here, Mark watched as angry red pulses traveled across certain networks, creating discord and division. He saw how some connections trapped people in rooms of mirrors, reflecting back only what they already believed, isolating them from different perspectives. The same tools that unite can also divide. The same platforms that empower can also imprison. Mark felt a profound heaviness settle over him. We try to solve for this. Content moderation. algorithm adjustments, research teams dedicated to well-being. The being's form shifted again, now appearing momentarily as a figure with gentle eyes that held no judgment, only compassion. Technology alone cannot solve problems of the soul. Algorithms cannot replace wisdom. Efficiency cannot substitute for compassion. For what felt like an eternity, they moved through the ocean of consciousness, the being showing Mark both the wonders and wounds his creations had helped manifest in the collective human experience. He saw how social validation metrics had rewired human interaction, incentivizing performance over authenticity. He witnessed attention spans fragmented across endless feeds, human contemplation interrupted by constant notifications. Yet he also saw genuine connections formed across vast distances, lost loved ones reunited, movements for justice organized, and voices of creativity amplified. The complexity of it all overwhelmed him. All his years of confident declarations about human connection, all his certainty about technology's unequivocal benefits, melted away. In their place grew something unfamiliar to the tech titan: humility. Deep, genuine humility before forces greater and more mysterious than he had ever acknowledged in board meetings or press conferences. The being seemed to sense this shift within him. Its light softened, becoming more intimate, more personal. "You have questions," it observed, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. Mark found himself nodding, though he had no physical body here to nod with. "What have I really been building all these years?" he asked finally, his innermost doubt taking form in this space beyond physical limitation. "And at what cost? Not just to others, but to myself?" The question hung between them, honest in a way Mark Zuckerberg rarely allowed himself to be, even in private. The being's form shifted again, briefly resembling a wise teacher from an ancient tradition. "Look inward now," it instructed. Suddenly, Mark was no longer observing the ocean of consciousness external to himself. Instead, he witnessed his own internal landscape, a terrain surprisingly barren for someone who had dedicated his life to connection. He saw his genuine early excitement about bringing people together, his authentic belief in creating positive change. But he also saw how those ideals had gradually been overshadowed by metrics, growth targets, market domination. He saw countless moments when he had been physically present with loved ones while his mind remained entangled in work problems. He witnessed the walls of cautious pragmatism he had built around his own vulnerability, his own capacity for wonder. In connecting the world, the being observed without judgment, "You disconnected from yourself." The truth of these words pierced Mark with unexpected force. Here, in this realm beyond physical constraints, beyond shareholders and congressional hearings, beyond the careful image he had constructed over years, something broke open inside him. "I thought I was creating freedom," he whispered, the words emerging from the deepest part of his being. "But I've been trapped in my own systems, responding to every crisis, defending every decision, always connected, always available, always solving, but never truly present, never truly experiencing the wonder of simply being human." Tears would have formed if he had physical eyes in this place. Instead, his emotion manifested as waves of blue light radiating outward from his consciousness, rippling across the vast ocean surrounding them. The being moved closer, its light enveloping Mark in what felt like the first genuine embrace he had received in years. Not the calculated handshakes of business deals or the performative hugs of public appearances, but a true holding of his complete self, flaws, regrets, ambitions, and all. "The greatest innovation," the being said softly, "may not be connecting everyone to everything at all times. Perhaps it lies in creating spaces where humans can disconnect from noise to connect with what matters most, where they can remember what exists beyond screens and notifications, where they can encounter not just information, but wisdom." Mark remained in that embrace for what could have been moments or millennia. Time had no meaning here. What mattered was the profound realization crystallizing within him. Technology without humanity's deeper values, compassion, presence, wonder, was merely sophisticated machinery, not true progress. "It's time for you to return," the being said. Mark felt a sudden panic. "I'm not ready." The being's light pulsed gently. "Understanding is a journey, not a destination. What matters is that you've begun to see differently." As the vast ocean of consciousness faded, the being's final words echoed. "True innovation serves the soul, not just the mind." Mark opened his eyes to find himself on the demonstration stage, surrounded by concerned faces. His chief technology officer explained he'd been unconscious for only 78 seconds after the power surge. 78 seconds that had somehow changed everything. "I'm fine," he said, though he knew those words couldn't capture the profound shift inside him. The neural interface project was suspended, and Mark was advised to rest, but what he really needed was time to think. His executive team noticed the changes first. In the emergency meeting after the incident, Mark listened more than spoke. When he finally did speak, he asked surprising questions. What if we've been optimizing for the wrong metrics? What if engagement and growth aren't serving our deeper mission of connection? Over the following weeks, he began taking walks without his phone, instituted silent beginnings to meetings, and asked different questions in product reviews. Most surprising was his directive to a hand-picked team. "I want you to develop digital Sabbath features, tools that actively encourage users to disconnect regularly." When a product manager objected about usage metrics, Mark smiled genuinely. "Perhaps we need new metrics that measure quality of experience, not just quantity of attention." 6 months later, Mark unveiled what analysts call the most unexpected pivot in tech history. Meditation timers, notification sabbaticals, content filters optimized for well-being, and the revolutionary presence mode, encouraging users to put down their devices. Though initially baffling to journalists and concerning to shareholders, users responded with enthusiasm. Mark had discovered that sometimes the most innovative path involves knowing when to step back. This story reminds us that even those who shape our digital world are on a human journey. If this message resonates with you, share it with someone who needs this reminder today. Like this video, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and join us in exploring what it means to live with both technological innovation and spiritual wisdom. Because the most important connections aren't made through fiber optic cables, but through the genuine presence we bring to each moment in our lives.